Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, July. I did it again. Wednesday, August the 10th, 2016, show number 1004. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on this Wednesday evening, or if you're tuning into the archive, whatever day of the week it happens to be for you. Tuesdays or Saturdays or Fridays, whenever you happen to watch. I'm Shawn King, your host. Thank you guys very much for joining me. On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Did you read those interviews over at Fast Company with Craig Federighi, Air Force One, Eddie Q, Tim Cook, and Bozema St. John, which has got to be the coolest name in tech right now? Some interesting stuff. We'll talk to Jim about those very interesting comments that they have made with regards to various aspects of Apple and the future. We're also on top of the Olympics. It's day 5 of the Olympics. And as I say before, my apologies for those of you who follow me on Twitter for my rants about the Olympics. It's been driving me nuts. We'll talk about that a little later on. Are you watching the Olympics? Are you enjoying the coverage? Are you enjoying seeing athletes from whatever country you choose compete? I love the Olympics. I'll always love the Olympics. Every 4 years, this happens. Every 2 years now, I guess. And it doesn't matter what the sport is. I love cheering folks on. I was cheering on a 18-year-old Ethiopian weightlifter this morning. Push, girl, push. She was 150 pounds, lifting 310 pounds over her head. I'm yelling at the TV, push, push. I'm just cheering her on. Go push. So, yeah. So, is there any sports that you like in particular? Send me an email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. And then in our starting point photography segment, all this week, but in particular, supposedly tomorrow night, between midnight and sunrise, the Perseid meteor shower is going to be showing off in the northeastern skies, for those of us in the northern hemisphere. This is a particularly big meteor shower event this year. Perseid meteor showers every single year around this time. But I guess we're coming through a particular heavy band of stuff, and so it should be twice as much. The predictions are twice as many meteor showers as usual, up to 200 an hour. 200, that's like 3 every minute. So we'll talk about how to take pictures of the meteor shower on the starting point photography segment. Dave D in the IRC chat room says, is Shawn King really excited about Portugal? Oh, God, am I excited. It's not even official yet. And I'm vibrating with excitement. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but if you want more info, this is we're narrowing it down, getting closer and closer to making it official. So now we're looking at the dates early May 2017. What that means is, fingers crossed, I, and maybe you, can be in Portugal for my birthday. How cool would that be? Come celebrate my birthday with me in Portugal. That'd be so. I'm buying. You know why I say I'm buying? Because apparently things are cheap in Portugal. A beer's $1.50. I'm buying. That's serious. I'm serious. I'm buying. Portugal, May 2017. We're waiting now to get pricing from the Portuguese end of things, and I've been doing a lot of research, and it sounds amazing. I didn't know anything about Portugal before this trip idea came up. I'm more of a Italy and England and Germany, Paris kind of guy. But Portugal's got an amazing history. It's the oldest country in Europe. I did not know that. Lisbon is an older city than Rome. I did not know that. There was a devastating earthquake in 1755 that literally leveled Lisbon and Porto, the two major cities. A lot of history there. We all know about Vasco da Gama and the discoveries that the Portuguese have made. At one point, the Portuguese had an empire that spanned the globe. Some beautiful art is there. Some wonderful locations for shooting. Obviously, this is going to be a photographic tour. Sorry, a photographic vacation. And one of the places I'm dying to go shoot is this thing called the Pena. I may be saying that wrong. The Pena Castle the Painted Palace in Sintra. Look at this. Look at this amazing building. Apparently, it's very, as one way to describe it is whimsical. It's supposed to be just a gorgeous, gorgeous palace to photograph. I'm dying. Look at this. This is just amazing. I'm dying to go and take pictures of this place. To learn to teach people how to take pictures. Portugal gets 300 days of sunshine a year. We're going to get some great photos. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, someone said, one of the funniest comments I saw with regards to the Olympics was someone wrote, I think every Olympic event, or let me pull this up for you guys. I think every Olympic event should include a normal person trying to compete just so we can fully appreciate how superhuman the athletes are. I think you already know how superhuman these guys are, how utterly incredible what they're doing is. It's, like I said, the Egyptian 18-year-old lifting 315 pounds over her head, and she didn't even win the event. She came like third. The Simone Biles, the American gymnast, who is just incredible. Someone said she's 4'8", and yet I think she could dunk a basketball while doing a backflip. The skill level across the board of these people is amazing. I think one of the things is here in Canada, we often cheer on even like the 10th place person. If you're doing a personal best, good for you. Americans tend to be more about number one. But keep this little thought in mind. The person who comes in fourth is thought of as the fourth best person on the planet doing that thing. One of the other funny tweets I saw was that we're sitting here on our couches. Here it is. Gymnast is a triple, double, ultra spin, backflip, front flip, but takes a tiny step when she lands. Me, mouthful of Pringles. What a loser. Have any of you done that? I know I'm guilty of it. I'm absolutely guilty of it. Oh, she didn't stick the landing. Are you kidding me? She just did a quadruple backflip. Or I've been watching synchronized diving, and there'll be two people jumping off the 10-meter platform. That's 33 feet in the air, people. They're jumping off a 3-story building. They'll do a quad spinning, twisting dive, hit the water, and they don't hit it dead on, so there's a bit of a splash, and we go, come on. It's like we could do it. I wouldn't even climb that tower. I've jumped off the 30-meter platform once, and it scared the crap out of me. I landed feet first. I didn't do any backflips. I didn't do a twisting somersault. I jumped off screaming, hit the water, went, okay, I've done that, never doing it again. It's funny how critical we are of this kind of stuff, but keep it in mind that these people are the top 10 in the world. If you're swimming the 200-meter breaststroke and you come in 7th, you're the 7th best swimmer on the planet. That's pretty incredible. That's really freaking amazing. But speaking of that, do we really need to see 4 different heats for every single swimming event? Why is there so much swimming? Is it because you ladies like to see the half-naked young boys? I get that. I understand that. There's too many of them, especially when it takes away from other events. We don't need to see every single heat of the 200-meter backstroke. This morning was a perfect example. The Canadian station, this is one of the stations here in Canada, I'm watching the station, and I hear, and big news in fencing today, Eleanor Harvey just advanced further in fencing than any Canadian woman ever has. She just beat the 2-time world champion and 2012's Olympic silver medalist. They showed none of it. They interviewed her afterwards, but they didn't show her match. Don't show me the 200-meter I don't give a shit backstroke heat. Show me the Canadian woman who's doing something no one's ever done before. And they said, and next up is her quarterfinal. And they cut away to beach volleyball. Not only did they cut away to beach volleyball, they cut away to beach volleyball Qatar and Austria. World powers in beach volleyball. But instead of showing the Canadian in the quarterfinals, they showed Qatar and Austria in beach volleyball. No offense to anyone in Qatar or anyone in Austria. There's not a single sport that you all do that I want to watch that would take precedent over a Canadian in fencing. And I love fencing. I don't understand it. It's just cool. That's just cool. I think fencing speaks to that little boy or little girl in all of us who did that with their little brothers and sisters when you were kids. You know, you got a stick, and you did that. Now they're scoring it. And women's rugby 7, that's just a great sport. It's brutal. It's violent. It's really cool. It's fast. Monty was saying he didn't understand it. Yeah, it's rugby is the problem with rugby is that it's close enough to football. You think the rules are going to be the same, but the rules are completely different. And that's where it gets really confusing. What sports are you guys having fun watching? There was a great article in the New York Times, and the Rio crowd goes crazy for whatever. It's kind of funny that these people don't seem to understand Brazilians. They've probably never dealt with Brazilians. I have on several occasions, generally during World Cup soccer, down Commercial Drive. Brazilians love to party. It's part of their national character. They love to have fun. Even when everything's going to hell in a handbasket. I was in the U.S. in 2002, I think it was. World Cup soccer, World Cup finals. Brazil and France. And someone invited me down to a Brazilian bar or restaurant to watch the game. I thought, that'd be great. It'd be a lot of fun. So I go there, and the Brazilians are having it before the match. They're having a blast. Halftime, the score is 2-0 France. Brazilians are not going to win this game. There's no way they're going to win this game. I said to my friend, should we leave? I said, why? Well, because, you guys are going to lose this, and it could get ugly. No, we're Brazilians. We're going to have a blast. And they kept partying through the whole rest of the match. At the end of it, they went out on the street and hugged French people. Brazilians just love to have fun. Apparently the people in the table tennis arena are like really freaked out by all the yelling and screaming of the Brazilians. But that's the nature of Brazilians. They love to enjoy themselves. They love to have fun. They love to, any excuse for a party is good for Brazilians. Sly says, my mom fenced in Hungary. Not competition. She's pissed they don't really show much of the fencing competition. Sly, you should show your mom or help your mom go to cbc.ca/Olympics, because I've been using that website. And, oops, hang on. That's not the one I wanted. I've been using this website to find the sports to watch. So you can go watch events, and then it will show. Hang on. Go to the schedule. Come on, schedule. Oh, for God's sake. Anyway, and this will tell you what's on when, and you can choose which events to pick. So here, for example, is Thursday, and on Thursday they'll show you what events are happening in what sports. So here's archery on Thursday, and badminton and basketball and beach volleyball and boxing. And so you can go to fencing, and it'll show you that women's team épée is at 5 a.m. and women's team, that's all épée. So use that. Maybe your mom can find that. That's what I've been doing all day. I've gotten so pissed off at the general coverage of not showing the stuff I want to see that I've gone to that site and watch it online, stream it online. Folks, later on, we're going to talk about taking photos of the Perseid meteor shower. It's on tomorrow evening, the biggest, bestest meteor shower of the year will happen tomorrow after midnight. So if you can, get outside, get out far enough out of your city to get away from all the bright city lights from about midnight to 4 or 5 a.m. We'll talk about how to take pictures of the Perseid meteor shower. But up next, we'll talk to our friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop about Apple and interviews and whatever else comes to mind. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King, joined on our phone now by our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Well, unlike most nights that I talk to you, I'm not drunk, so...
I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Well, I don't know. I could be crankier, or I don't know.
I have to play that one by ear. Are you watching any of the Olympics?
Watched a little bit of the Olympics. I saw Canada women play soccer the other day. Beat Germany.
Yeah, it was 3-2 or 2-2.
Yeah.
3-2, yeah. Great game.
Yeah. Saw some Canadian swimmers. Watched Michael Phelps. I mean, for Canadians, though, when they swim, they usually have to cut a hole in the ice first. So.
One Canadian guy almost drowned over the weekend. Sly and I were talking on IRC or on iMessage. We felt so bad for the guy because he came in like dead last in the first heat. It's not our forte.
No, swimming is not our big thing.
We like the water, but we didn't like it to be frozen water first. Although we won bronze in isn't it funny how excited Canadians get for bronze? I think that's a really interesting look at the two nations where Americans think silver is the first loser, but Canadians are like, yay, we got bronze. We're kind of happy we got bronze.
They're happy if they even finish the race.
Exactly.
I've been enjoying a little bit of the Olympics.
I think the best part of the Canadian coverage is the tagline that CBC uses, and I think it says everything about the Canadian attitude towards this kind of stuff. And their tagline is "Cheer on, follow Canada, cheer on the world." I think it's I love that idea. I love the idea of cheering on the world. I was telling the audience this morning. I was watching weightlifting. I'm cheering on this Egyptian 18-year-old weightlifter. There's no Canadians involved in it, but she's doing her best to push 300 pounds up over her head. I'm like, push, girl, push. That's what we should be doing.
How do they lift 300 pounds over their head?
And especially the fact that these women are tiny, and the men are even tiny. I saw one guy, 120-pound Thai male, lift 315 pounds over his head. That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is.
And that's why I love watching those kinds of sports where people are doing things that are just utterly incredible. The swimming, as much as I rag on the fact that we're watching 200-meter heats of swimming, the thought that they can swim that fast. I've swum in Olympic pools, and how they can get up and down those lanes inside 30 seconds is just mind-boggling.
Well, I mean, I could do it.
No, you couldn't.
I
the
could
beard
do
would
that
get in the
swimming.
way.
Well, the only problem with me is that, my belly's like a flotation device, and I might flip over
That's right.
partway down.
Well, so you'd be great at the backstroke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aerodynamics, not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much. Looking forward to, I guess next week is going to be the track and field, and that's the big sexy thing. I think as much as I don't like to criticize sports, I think judo is the most boring sport. Because judo feels like what you did with your little brother when you were 7. It's just like tugging and pulling on his pajamas.
Yeah, there is some weird stuff like that.
Is there anything that you're not seeing that you want to see?
Hockey.
Well,
hockey.
well, they have field hockey.
I love hockey at the Olympics.
That's right.
That's what I want to see.
It is kind of frustrating to see that they're not showing some of the sports live. Like I've been saying to the audience, I love fencing. I think fencing is fascinating. They don't show nearly enough of it, if any of it. Table tennis, weirdly enough, I really like watching table tennis. They don't show any of that. But overall, the coverage has been okay, as much as it frustrates me to see all these. I'd love to see someone do a graph of how much of the actual events they're showing versus how much of the fluff they're showing.
Yeah.
The fluff I wish it was a fluff channel. Get all the fluff off the main station and just give me a fluff channel that people can watch if they want to watch fluff.
Yeah, I just want to see the sports.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, speaking of stuff we want to see, it was very interesting that this past week there was a couple of articles, a series of articles from the folks at Fast Company. They did interviews with Tim Cook, Craig Federighi, Eddie Q, and Bozma St. John. Anything in those interviews you thought was particularly interesting?
I'm really liking the interviews with Eddie and Tim these days.
Yeah.
I don't agree with everything that Apple is doing at the moment, especially Eddie. But I have a lot of respect for Eddie. And, they're in a tough position right now as a company because the overall thought, when you look at Apple, if Apple doesn't outsell itself year after year, then they're a failure. But when you look at revenues from the last quarter, revenues on iPad started to rise.
Yep.
So have we hit the bottom on iPad? Well, maybe not. But then when you look at Wall Street actually bumped the stock price up
significantly. Yeah.
So Apple can record a monster profit, and Wall Street will knock it down. So when you look at interviews like Fast Company had, I think that you have to look deeper into what Tim and Eddie are trying to do.
There was one thing that jumped out at me, something that Eddie Q said with regards to, everyone reported the story as this is the reason why we now have iOS betas, was the fact what Eddie was saying about maps. And what he said, he said, I think it's awesome that Travis and his team have done, sorry, that's the wrong quote. Sorry. Where's the right damn quote? But that to me seemed, he said, to all of us living in Cupertino, the maps here were pretty darn good, right? So the problem wasn't obvious to us. We were never able to take it out to a large number of users to get that feedback. Now we do. I got to call bullshit on that. Because to me, what Eddie Q is saying is that we are so insulated that we never thought to go to Indianapolis to check our maps, to go to Seattle to check our maps, to go to L.A. to check our maps. That to me seems Eddie's covering something up. Because I don't believe Apple's that dumb.
Well, I think you have to remember that during the release time of maps, that whole team was under different leadership with Scott Forstall.
Yes.
And, Scott could be as much of a dictator and a dick as as anyone else.
Yep.
Or, to some people, Scott was a great guy, depending on, what side of the bed he was on. But they were different times. And, Apple has opened up a lot in the last few years. If you look at how they've opened up and all the different things that they've done, from PR to public betas to all the different things that they're trying to do. And again, I'll be honest with you, some of the things I don't agree with.
Yeah.
I like the secret of Apple. I think the secret of Apple was great.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that comes out of this as well is Apple leaks like a sieve now.
Yeah.
You can basically call the switchboard and get any secret you want out of Apple secret product. And it hasn't been this bad since Emilio.
Yeah.
You remember Emilio, anything you want, just call the switchboard. Yeah, are you coming out with a new MacBook? Yeah, we are in January. At least that's what I see around campus.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, the fact that the Mac Week magazine would announce things before Apple ever announced them back in the day.
Well, that's what it's like again. Apple security is so bad these days.
But we've talked about this before. Don't you think that's a factor of the supply chain? The fact that Apple is now.
I don't think it's all coming from the supply chain. No.
Really, you think some of this is coming out of Cupertino?
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
I think some of it's definitely coming out of Cupertino.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% with you.
Those people are hurting Apple. You have employees of Apple leaking company secrets, and they're hurting their company.
Yeah.
And I think it's awful that they do that. I really do. But I'm the only one that liked the secret of Apple. I thought surprises at events and stuff were great.
Yep.
And there's no real surprises at events anymore. It's all out there. And what they don't get is that gives competitors a chance to get on the ball and work on products and stuff like that. I don't like it.
Do you think that it's a factor of the company changing, or the fact that people are less afraid of Tim Cook than they were of Steve Jobs?
Well, no, there were still leaks when Steve was around, and I think that things maybe it's the way that we communicate now that has magnified the way that leaks are done.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Tim's fault. I don't think it's anybody's fault. The person who's at fault are the employees that are leaking the info.
Yeah.
Those people need to piss off. If you're trying to screw up the company, then you're doing a good job.
Craig Federighi was quoted in the article saying, "A world where people do not care about the quality of their experience is not a good world for Apple. A world where people care about those details and want to complain about them is the world where our values shine. That is our obsession." Do you understand and agree with that?
Yeah, I do. But then, anytime somebody mentions experience or something like that, I come back to Apple Music. And you see, this is one of those areas where I don't necessarily agree with Apple. Apple thinks, and I'm basing this on their own actions. Apple thinks that the way to go is exclusives.
Yes.
That's how you get users. Well, that's not how you get users. You get users by having a good quality service. Because after the exclusive is over, people leave and they go back to a service that works. And that's not Apple Music. So it's getting much better. It is getting much better. I'll give them credit. They're working hard on it. And they've changed a lot of things. But to focus on exclusives over what?
It's definitely, we're hearing rumors now of a new version of the Apple Watch coming out, and folks saying that with the OS and with the new version of the Apple Watch, that the Apple Watch may have come out too soon.
Oh, no, that's just such horseshit. Jesus.
No, what I'm saying is that this is the kind of thing that didn't happen before. Things didn't feel half baked, like we've often said Apple Music is. There's no doubt that the first version of the Apple Watch OS wasn't very good.
That's just not true. That's not true. We said when iTools came out that, yuck. This isn't as good. And it's easy to say, a year or two after a product is released, well, this is what it should be. Now, the only time that I can honestly say that happened was when Steve Jobs released OS X. That was a half-baked product. Was half-baked.
You mean the original beta?
Yeah, no, the original version was the beta. Okay,
yeah.
The original version didn't even have CD burning. I mean, it didn't have anything in it.
Yeah.
And he expected us to use it, and we did because he told us to. Yeah. But it was still a big steaming pile of shit.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I think probably 2 versions later, maybe 10.2, 10.3, where we all said, this is OS X. This is what it was meant to be right here. Now it works.
There was an interesting statement also by Federighi, which really kind of made me sit back and think I don't understand Apple, which is certainly possible. He said, Maps is this core organizing structure for the physical world in which you interact. The map is a foundation for building all kinds of value on the platform, just as our operating systems are a foundation. He's talking about Maps as being something bigger than what it is now. Do you understand what he's talking about?
No.
No, neither do I. I read that like several times. I've asked several people. We all know that Apple does things today that are meant to happen or to bear fruit in 2 years, in 3 years. But if that's what he's talking about with Maps, I don't really understand how he perceives Maps as being the foundation for anything going forward.
Well, I don't know what he's talking about there, but you're right in the way that Apple does things and the way that they lay out a foundation for different things.
Yeah.
And they've done it. I mean, you can look back to almost every app Apple does, and that's what they've done. I mean, I brought this up before about iPhoto. iPhoto was basically a digital shoebox. That's all it was.
Yeah.
You could put your pictures in here. You couldn't do shit with them, but you could put your pictures in here. And, iPhoto grew and grew and grew until it actually grew too much.
Yeah.
And it was so bloated that they quit that and went to Photos. And that was a smart move too, I believe. But, they continue to do this, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because they put it out there, and then they decide from there where they're going to go.
Yep. Speaking of not doing smart things, Facebook blocks ad blockers, but it strives to make ads more relevant. Wasn't this one of those stories that you read and you went, oh, come on, guys, what the hell?
Yeah, well, and now everybody's trying to figure out how to do exactly what Facebook is doing.
But the idea that I understand that companies don't like ad blockers, but I think part of the problem is companies don't understand why people use ad blockers. The vast majority of people don't mind a good, unobtrusive, well-done advertisement. When I say well done, it means it doesn't slow my frickin' webpage from loading.
Right, I agree.
The vast majority of people don't mind those kinds of ads. But the ads that we see on, well, I'm looking at the New York Times website right now, and I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ads on the very first thing I see on the front page of the New York Times. And I guarantee you at least half of those are slowing down page load times.
Yep.
So this is what Facebook is saying. Facebook is saying, okay, you folks who are using ad blockers, we're going to block your ad blocker and then force more advertising on you.
Well, because that's how FaceTime makes money. Or Facebook. That's how Facebook makes money.
But it shows a fundamental lack of understanding of your own audience.
No, I think it shows a fundamental lack of caring about your audience.
Well, there's that too.
Well, it does. I mean, they understand that people don't want as many ads as what they get when they surf the web, but Facebook doesn't care because that's how they make their money. So it's like what we were talking about earlier with Apple Music. Apple doesn't care that it's not exclusives that we want. We don't care about the churn of this many subscribers, and even though some fall out, we'll get another exclusive and we'll make that many more people go in.
Yeah.
They don't care about making the service better. They care about that churn so that they can come out and say, oh, we have 15 million subscribers and our base revenue for services is up.
Yeah.
That's what they care about these days. And that's unfortunate because the service is sucking because of it. And that's something that Eddie needs to fix. So, I have a lot of respect for Eddie. I have respect for Mark Zuckerberg, too. He's built a huge company.
Sure.
But, when your lack of caring starts to drive your business, you got a big problem coming.
Yeah, that's right. We've talked on several occasions about this Planet of the Apps thing. And Apple,
I still don't get that.
Even before this story, I didn't get the Planet of the Apps thing. I can't see any drama in it, any comedy. I can't see anything that's interesting to the average person. Yes, I understand nerds and geeks are going to just jizz themselves over it, but you can't build an audience with just nerds and geeks. But then last week it was announced that Gwyneth Paltrow will be a mentor on Planet of the Apps.
Yeah, I should be a mentor on Planet of the Apps.
I think you'd be better.
I think so.
What the hell does Gwyneth Paltrow have to do? It's not even like it's star power. It's not like she's some huge Hollywood star. She's well known. But,
first of all, I'm better looking than Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, dear God. Not even close.
Yeah, I can do it.
I mean, if you're going to, as much as I hate to say the words, if you're going to do it, you get Kim Kardashian. Because at least she's developed a multi-million-dollar app.
I'm going to hang up. You keep talking like that and all that shit. Jeez.
But it makes more sense. I mean, they've also got tech investor Gary Vaynerchuk and Will.i.am. What the hell?
Yeah, because Will.i.am is relevant.
Exactly. Like he's some big tech guru.
Yeah.
It makes no sense on any in any plane of existence that this could be a show. This, to me, seems like Apple's being very tone deaf on this one. Apple could do a TV show that would be very interesting to a lot of people. This ain't it.
Well, I think Apple should have me star in the show.
I'd watch that more so than I'd watch Gwyneth Paltrow.
In my Speedo.
And see, come on now. Come on. What the hell is wrong with you? Jesus.
I just had to leave that out there.
Oh, God. Now I got to go watch some Olympics to get that out of my head.
Yeah, that'll work.
Walt Mossberg wrote a story on Recode today, which kind of confused me. He said, the 9.7-inch iPad Pro might be your lightest laptop thanks to Logitech. Do you agree with him on that?
What does Logitech have to do with this?
Well, the keyboard.
Oh, no.
Thank you.
No.
I think by attaching a keyboard to an iPad Pro, you're defeating the purpose of the iPad Pro.
Yeah.
It's also, you can't use, I don't think, never having done it, but I don't think you can use the iPad Pro with a keyboard on your lap.
It's difficult.
Yeah, it's not. Whereas on a laptop, it's going to be easier. I don't understand why people have to take the iPad and try to make it something it's not by adding a keyboard, by adding a mouse, by adding a monitor, whatever it is. You're just turning it into a laptop.
I use the iPad Pro, the smart cover with the keyboard.
Yeah.
I like that, and the 9.7 iPad Pro is brilliant.
Oh, I agree.
Love
Absolutely.
Love
Absolutely.
It. I'd recommend that to anybody.
But for long-term use, like a lot of typing, would you use the iPad with a keyboard, or would you go to your Macintosh and use that?
Well, now there's a difference. I would use because I'm old and cranky. I would use my Mac, but if I'm going on a trip for the weekend or something.
Yeah.
I've just taken my iPad Pro in the past and used that. It's great. I can do whatever I need to do.
But why wouldn't you bring your laptop in that situation?
Because I really didn't need it. Because I knew I'd be back in a couple of days. The iPad does everything I need. So there you go.
Yeah, I can't see how Mossberg's claim is this will be your lightest laptop. Yeah, it would be. But if you need a laptop, get a frickin' laptop.
Yeah, I'm not one of those that needs to make the iPad fit my lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly.
I will let the iPad fit in where it needs to fit in. And if that's as a laptop, then great. If it's not, if it fits in as an iPad, then that's great too.
Yeah, I don't get this idea of shoehorning the iPad into a product category where it doesn't belong.
And that's why the iPad works so well for me, because I don't try and shoehorn it into being a laptop. I have a laptop, and I love it. MacBook is the greatest laptop out there.
Now, the argument might be that if you only have a limited amount of money, and you've got $1,000, do you buy an iPad Pro or do you buy a MacBook Air or a MacBook?
All going to depend on your usage and what you want to do.
I agree.
I mean, for some people, it's going to be an iPad.
I think for the average person, I would never dissuade them from getting an iPad Pro.
No.
I think they both have their good points and their bad points. They both have their great situations where they're perfect for and great and situations where they're not very good at. And you've got to find out which situation you're going to be using it in and then buy the equipment that's meant for that.
Agreed.
There's been a story running around. Apple should stop selling 4-year-old computers. This is the dig at Apple that none of their machines, their laptops or their desktops, have really had much in the way of additions or revisions in 4 years. I think the funniest comment had to come from a guy named Brian Hall. Now, Brian is the general manager of the Surface product at Microsoft. And he says, and I quote him on Twitter, "I compete with Apple, and I respect Apple, but they are doing their customers a disservice at times with old tech." Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Hall, you're part of Microsoft. You should never comment on Apple. It always blows up in your face. Now, that being said, is he right?
Well, yeah, of course he's right. Apple needs to release new MacBooks, definitely.
Yeah.
And the ones that are out there now, are they old? Yeah, they are old. They could use it as.
Lost you, Jim. You still there? Jim. Sorry. Did you go under the bridge?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. We lost you at. Go ahead.
You can only refresh the tech when the tech is available.
Yes.
So you rely on a lot of different companies, including Intel, including if this new computer that's being rumored is true. There's a lot of new tech, and I mean.
Lost you again, Jim. You said there's a lot of new tech and what? Yeah, he's officially gone. I heard the beep, 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 and Jim's done. All right. Well, we were ending anyway. Could someone DM Jim on Twitter and tell him that we're done? I'm not going to call him back. Sorry about that, but I get his point. His point was that, and one of the problems is that a lot of the tech media doesn't get and doesn't explain to people is, as Jim was saying, Apple can only revise things when there's a reason to, when Intel gives them chips that are worthy of the platform. Apple's not going to just bring out new laptops and call them the 2015, 2016 laptop if there's not a significant upgrade, or at least a perceptual upgrade on it. And Intel just hasn't been giving Apple the kind of chips that Apple wants in order to make these revisions. It's also why you hear rumors quite often that at some point in the near future, Apple is going to switch to its own silicon for its machines. That way they wouldn't have to wait on Intel. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It makes sense. Because if the design issue, if the problem with revisions is waiting on Intel, not waiting on Apple, that's going to be a problem for Apple. If they made their own chips, they wouldn't have to wait on anybody else. In our starting point photography segment, I mentioned earlier in the show that this week, in particular tomorrow evening after midnight, Thursday evening after midnight, the planet Earth is going to go through the Perseid meteor shower. What that is it's we're going through the tail of a comet, and not the Perseid comet, but the tail of a comet, and the bits and pieces of a comet left behind create meteors in the sky. So we call it the Perseid meteor shower because it looks like all of the meteors are coming out of the Perseid constellation, which is for us here in North America, in the northeast corner of the sky. So what you got to do is wait for the moon to go down. You can still see them occasionally with the moon up, but you won't see as many. Wait for the moon to go down, so about after midnight, and you can do a search to find out when moon set is in your particular time zone. Wait for the moon to set, and then get away from city lights. If you are in downtown Vancouver, forget about it. If you're in New York City, forget about it. If you're in any major city, you're not going to see anything. You have to get outside the city limits, and the further outside the city limits you get, the more likely you are to be able to see anything in the sky. The further out you get, the more meteors you're going to see. And the thing is, this is going to be a particularly dramatic meteor shower because we're going through apparently two different kinds of basically debris fields. So you want to get outside. The further outside those debris fields you get, the better. Now, one of the downsides is for most of us in North America and everyone in Europe, this map shows you, this is the Dark Site Finder map. DarkSiteFinder.com is the map. And if you're at all interested in astronomy, this is a freaking depressing map. Because if you look at where the major population centers are in Europe and in North America, finding dark sky is going to be a real bear. Our friend Monty was just saying in IRC that he was going to get outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Well, there's Atlanta. Guess what, Monty? You ain't got a hope of getting any dark sky. you got no chance. Now, I'm up here in Chilliwack, British Columbia, so I've got a little bit. I can go out to the edges here. I'm going to go out into the woods out here and see if I can't get into a darker area. But Dark Site Finder is the website to go to see if you are able to get into a truly, truly dark area. Sherry says, I can drive about 10 minutes and hit blue. Monty, Shawn's going into the woods? Well, I'm not going into the woods. I'm not going off-road. I'm not going to leave the pavement. I'm going to go towards the woods. Now, one thing you can do... Hang on, just a second. Got to bring my camera. So one thing is, as always, read your camera's manual. Your camera's manual is going to be available on the manufacturer's website. And if you've got a camera that has got, we've talked about these before, it's got one of these scene modes on it. One thing you can do is set the scene mode, and a lot of cameras will have these kinds of neat settings. So this one's got the fisheye effect, a wide angle, macro, 3D photo, portrait, landscape, sport, handheld starlight, night scene, night portrait, children. So see if your camera has a starlight mode on it. Then go out and take some practice pictures. The best thing to do is to go out a couple hours early while it's still dark and take some practice photos. Bring along a flashlight if you can, preferably a red light flashlight. They're hard to find, but if you have one, bring one, because you don't want to ruin your night vision. It takes about 20 minutes to half an hour for your eyes to get completely accustomed to the dark. So you go out there into the woods or away from the city lights, turn off your car headlights, and then wait about 20, 30 minutes. The problem is when you turn your camera on, it's going to have this bright screen in the back. So you want to avoid the bright screen. So what you want to do is get your camera completely set up before you start taking pictures. So you don't have to look at the back screen and ruin your night vision. A lot of hardware stores will have what's called a red light camera. A red light flashlight, and basically it doesn't have the brightness of a regular flashlight. So set it up. You have to have a tripod. You cannot do this handheld. You've got to have a tripod. You've got to have some sort of stable platform to do this on. Whether it could be a bag of sand, it could be pillows, whatever it is. But you cannot hold the camera up and take pictures of the meteor showers. If your camera has the night scene mode, the starlight mode, take a couple of test shots and see what happens when you push the shutter button. What should happen is you should hear the camera go click, and then it should take quite a bit of time before you hear it click again. If it does, you're golden. What that means is your camera is going to open up the shutter for a very, very long period of time. I'm talking anywhere from between 10 and 30 seconds. So it's going to stay open, grab as much light as it can in that period of time, and then it'll close again. One of the reasons why I say read your camera manual is because some cameras, my Nikon D600, for example, will do multiple exposures. And multiple exposures are kind of cool. So what would happen is I would set my camera up in the tripod in multiple exposure mode. So I'll do 4 exposures. I'd push the camera button once, and it would open up, stay open for 30 seconds, and then close. I'd push the camera shutter again, and instead of taking a different picture, it would take another picture, but then it would merge it with the first one. So if I got a streak going this way, and then a streak coming that way, it would merge the 2 photos together, so I'd get 2 streaks. And you do that with a series of photos. It looks really kind of cool. You 4, 5, 6 of these, and if you get the right kind of streaks, you can get a really, really neat photo. You want to set your aperture to be the highest number it can be. Sorry. Hang on. Go back. You want to have a wide-angle lens on your camera. You want to have it to be, this one is a 12 to 40 millimeter lens. You don't want a 200 millimeter lens. It's got a very, very, you don't need to zoom in. You can't really zoom into the sky. The other thing you do when you put your camera on a tripod is turn off vibration reduction. I know it sounds weird, but you turn off vibration reduction whenever your camera is on a tripod. Focus, you can do an autofocus and then turn off autofocus. You turn off autofocus because you don't want your camera hunting for focus every time you push the shutter button. You're going to focus on the great big sky, and you're only going to do that once. So you don't want to push the shutter and have your lens hunting for focus, because especially at night, it's very difficult to get focus. So do autofocus once and then turn off autofocus. Again, it's the reason why you read your camera manual, so you know how to turn off your autofocus. Monty says, if you have one of those 2 AA size Maglite flashlights, the cap off a 2-liter Coke bottle fits over the end. Cool. Here in the U.S., those caps are red. I never thought about that, Monty. That's a brilliant idea. Mosquito says every city kid should have the opportunity to go someplace where they can see this kind of stuff. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Mind-blowing. I still remember the first day I saw the Milky Way. when I walked out on my dad's farm in the middle of nowhere in Nova Scotia and just was gobsmacked at this band of stars that were overhead. Scott Thrift says, if you want to preserve night vision, at least in one eye, do what the pirates did. The eye patch wasn't for effect. By covering one eye, it preserved the night vision in that eye. Switch the patch between eyes, and you have one exhausted to dark, one to look at camera. I'd never heard of that, Scott, but it makes perfect sense. So you want to have a wide-angle lens, and you want to set your ISO to a low number at first. Your ISO is a measure of light sensitivity. So you'd think, because you're out in the dark, you'd want it to be very sensitive to light. The problem is, because your shutter is going to be open for a very, very long time, you can get a lot of noise in the photo. So start off with a low ISO, take a few test shots, and bump it up if you need to. But I always start off with an ISO of even 50, lower than normal. Your aperture, depending on what's in, don't just take your shot of just sky. Have something in the foreground. Trees. Here I'll have mountains. Have sort of a frame of reference for the viewer. Don't just have straight sky. Have sky, mountains, trees, that kind of stuff. And to get it all in focus, you're going to want to have a large aperture, a large aperture number. So f11, f22. I tend to keep mine an f8 or f11. That's usually the fire and forget apertures. If you're practicing and just playing around, go to f8, go to f11, and don't worry about it. Now, some cameras, I mentioned that this has just check to make sure, this camera has a shutter speed of, just flipping this around to see what's my lowest. Yeah, there we go. So this particular camera will do, I don't know if you can see it down here, a 60-second timer on it, or shutter opening. Some will have what's called bulb mode. And bulb mode is where you push the shutter once, and push the shutter button once, and it stays open until you push it again. So you can leave your shutter open for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Start off at 30-second intervals. Take a 30-second picture and look to see how it looks on your camera. See if you're getting the results that you want to get. And then increase that if you can. Some will only do a maximum of 30. Some will only do a maximum of 60. If your camera does bulb mode, and again, read your manual. If your camera does bulb mode, do some practice shots with bulb mode of a minute, of even 2 minutes. Now, the downside is, if you're going to open up your shutter speed in bulb mode, or if you're going to open up your shutter in bulb mode, what happens is you push the shutter once, and it opens up, and then a minute later, you push it again. The problem is, pushing it moves the camera. It'll introduce blur. Okay? So what you want to do is have what's called a cable release. Hang on a second. Oh, sorry. Wasn't prepared. So you can either have you can go to your local camera store. Here in Vancouver, we have London Drugs, Best Buys, Future Shops, whatever it might be. Take your camera with you and see if they have a shutter release that works with your camera. What it generally will do is it'll plug in somewhere in your camera, and instead of physically touching the camera and moving it, you've got this wire that will fire the shutter and won't move the camera. Now, for my Nikon my Nikon D600, I've got a wireless shutter release. So I just push this little button, and it fires the shutter off. The problem is these are specific to brands, so this Nikon won't work with this Olympus. So you got to find the right one for your particular camera model. Now, the other thing is, how do you find out where the meteors are? You don't want to just be standing outside looking up. You want to be looking at where the meteors are coming in from. And I've told you guys about this before. I absolutely love this Star Walk app. This is such a cool, fun app. So what you do is it's called Star Walk. 2 words, Star Walk. You take this with you outside, and as you move, this is my iPad screen. As you move your iPad around, it shows you the sky. So right now, directly in front of me is the center of the Milky Way. Now the sun's still up. Actually, it'll even show you where the sun is, right there. The sun, and that yellow line is the path of the sun. You can see that there's Jupiter, Mercury, what's the other one? And Venus are all in a line right there. This is a really cool app. So you do a search for Perseus, and it will show you. Here, I'll show you. I click here, and click search, P-E-R-S, Perseids. And see the arrow in the upper right-hand corner? The arrow tells you where to point. And there it is. There's the Perseid. So for me, due north right now is where the Perseid meteor shower is going to be coming from. It's a really neat app. It's really, really fun. Sherry says Star Walk also has a red light mode. Yes, Sherry, it does. Check it out. And the night mode is that. So this is easier on your eyes. Let it refresh itself. Come on. There we go. So this is easier on your eyes to be able to spot the things in the sky. It's really kind of cool. It also has a neat function of being able to set the visual magnitude down here at the bottom. So you can tell it to give me just the main bright stars, or you can have it show you even more stars. Generally, if you're near a city, you want to just see the brightest ones, but it's a neat app. This is a lot of fun. And then when you see things, you can tap on particular objects, and it will give you information about those objects. So this is the constellation of Corvus. If you have kids that are at all interested in astronomy, that are at all interested in the night sky, Star Walk is a great app. It's a really fun app. I've sat when I was living with Kim. I'd go outside and I'd literally lie on the ground and just hold the app up and seeing what stars were above us. So find out where the Perseid shower is. Go out after dark, maybe a couple hours before midnight, 10 o'clock, 10:30. Take some test shots. You want to make sure your camera, read your manual, see if your camera has a scene mode that will allow you to do starlight shots. Or set your camera in manual mode with a aperture of f8 to f11 and a shutter speed anywhere between 30 seconds and a minute, and do some test shots with that, with a wide angle lens on a tripod, and turn off vibration reduction on your camera. Mosquito says there's a free version and a $3 one. It's from vitotechnology.com. Another one like it is Star Walk is Sky Guide. Another one. Try out any of those. They're all a lot of fun. Stellarium. If you want to find out when the other thing is on this app, it will tell you, at least I can't pull this up. There was a way of seeing. Oh, yeah, here we go. It'll also show you various aspects of the solar system. When Venus is rising, when it sets, when the moon is rising, and when it sets, what quarter of the moon it is. So this one tells me that the moon rose at 2 o'clock. When does moon set? I thought the app told me when the moon set. It says sets app. It doesn't give me a time. That's odd. It tells you when the sunset is and all that kind of stuff. So it's a cool app. It's a lot of fun. I played around it quite often. Monty says, I've caught ISS, Hubble, and several of the Iridium satellites thanks to messages from SkyGuide. Yeah, I don't know about messages, but I know Skywalk will let you search for those satellites as well, too. Check it out. As always, if you have any questions for me, please send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. I love getting emails from you guys during the week, if you'd like, or during the live version of the show. How many of you guys have or had, when you were kids, a trampoline? They weren't very popular when I was a kid. None of my friends could afford a trampoline. We lived in apartments, so no one had a trampoline. The only trampolines we had were in school. And even in school, the trampolines weren't very popular, if only because, at least for me, we had them in the gym, and the teacher would get us all standing around the trampoline as sort of catchers if a kid flew off. You're supposed to catch him. But because I was like 6 feet tall and 180 pounds, none of the other kids would catch me. So, but I've seen a lot of places now have these trampolines that kids, your backyard trampoline, which is kind of cool. But there's something wonderfully simplistic and joyful about a trampoline, isn't there? Just the simple act of bouncing. That's all it is, just bounce. Maybe you'll land on your back, bounce. Maybe if you're a really good kid, you'll do a flip. But mostly, you're just bouncing. That's all a trampoline does. It bounces you. Okay? That's all a trampoline should do, is bounce you. And yet, as we've spoken about many times in the show, the Internet of Things is ruining childhood. There's now an Internet-connected trampoline. Why the hell do you need an Internet-connected trampoline? Why does your trampoline have to be connected to Wi-Fi? This is ridiculous. This is a smart trampoline that can monitor your every jump. Why? Why do your jumping have to be monitored? You want to monitor your jumping? Count. 1, 2, 3. I don't need a trampoline to tell me how many times I've jumped. Who cares how many times you've jumped? Macman says, I can see it for workouts. Why? Might be good for aspiring trampolinists. No, trampolinists don't need to know how many times you jump. You need to know what you do when you jump. Doesn't matter how many times you jump. Monty, safety maybe? Alerting parents that kids are on it without supervision? No, because if it's a safety issue, the trampoline's got this big, great frickin' net around it. Right? There's your safety issue. Susan says, shh, Logan will figure out a good use for Wi-Fi connected trampolines. There is no good use for Wi-Fi connected trampolines. It's simple as that. You just don't need one. You don't need one. Not everything has to be internet connected. Don't make everything internet connected. Don't take the simple joy of bouncing away from a kid because you're tracking him. Your kid should not be on an open trampoline by himself anyway. If it's a safety issue, then you have the netting around it. Logan, you're old, Shawn. Yeah, true. Scott Thrift. If you reach 100 jumps, you unlock hidden features. That's right. Oh, God. the emails on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Got a bit of a rant from our friend Scott Thrift. I think Scott's in the IRC chat room. Is he still in the IRC chat room? Yeah, he is. All right, Scott, here's your rant. He says, a couple of months ago, you read an email from me singing the praises of Apple support. In the time since, have they suddenly gone all nuts? Yesterday, I went to download GarageBand for iOS, which is supposed to be free, but only showed as a $7.99 paid app. After 45 minutes of chatting online with support, I was assured that if I clicked the Get and Buy button, I would not be charged. I asked them, were they sure? Click away, I was told. So, this morning I woke up to a receipt from Apple for $7.99 GarageBand. I'm sorry, Scott. I'm only kind of laughing at you. After 2 hours online with support, I was given the worst ever response from Apple. We cannot be held responsible for advice given by our staff. Jesus. Now, they have said they'll issue a refund, which will take up to 10 days to process. When did companies no longer take responsibility for their staff's actions? I think you may have gotten bad staffing on that one. First of all, you should be able to, and maybe the consumer protection laws are different in Australia, but aren't you allowed to get a refund instantly when you buy something? I know I've never tried it with the Apple online store, but I know I bought Groupons and then found out later on they don't ship to Canada, and I can hit the cancel button and immediately get a refund. I thought that was the case too. Scott, next time you get that kind of information from someone, we cannot be held responsible for advice given to our staff, ask to be escalated. Whenever you talk to tech support and don't get the response you want, the next thing out of your mouth should be, could you please escalate? Could I please speak to the next level? Get to their supervisor. And if their supervisor doesn't give you satisfaction, get to their supervisor. Keep escalating. For stuff like this, I guarantee you, if you'd keep escalating it, they would have given you a refund on the spot. But part of this is on you, buddy. If it says get and then it says buy, I don't care what anybody says. I ain't clicking the buy button, okay? I don't believe you on tech support. Now, you're right. I thought that GarageBand for iOS was a free app, or am I wrong? Or is it just GarageBand on the Mac OS is free? I don't know. So maybe they were giving you bad advice, or anyone in the IRC chat know? Yeah, MacMan says the same thing. Time to call back and ask for a supervisor. I'm waiting for a promised callback to say the refund will take 10 days for bank processing. MacMan says, I got it free with my iPad Air and iPhone 6. Yeah? Okay. So, yeah, but definitely don't, if it says buy, don't click it. just don't do that. Marcus Mendez down there in Brazil. Marcus, I hope you are enjoying your country's Olympics. And so far, except for the green pool, sounds like you guys are doing a bang-up job. Good for you. Listening to this week's YML, your discussion about the iPad, last week's YML, your discussion about the iPad Pro with Jim. I got an iPad Pro in the first week of January and thought it would be a nice experiment to work exclusively on it to see how it would go. As it turns out, I'm still using it every day. I've managed to replace my MacBook Pro with the iPad, and since then I've only opened my Mac about 2 or 3 times this year. At the end of the day, I like OS way more than OS X, Mac OS, and the iPad Pro became my work and home computer in a much more pleasant way than the Mac ever was. Who knew? That's very interesting, Marcus. Very, very interesting. I love hearing these stories from folks because I know I couldn't and wouldn't work that way. I couldn't work just on the iPad Pro just because of the things I do. The photography, the show, the multitasking. Could not do that on an iPad Pro. I know people have done their podcasts on the iPad Pro. Don't want to. I don't want to go through the hassle. I've read their workflow, and it's a frickin' nightmare. I wouldn't go through that. So I'm always interested in hearing other people who have done it and what their workflow is and how they've managed to do it. I completely recognize that I'm not the guy that can do it, but I love hearing from folks that they have and can do. I find that really, really interesting. Question from Janine. Which DSLR camera and lens should I buy as a beginner? Buy anything. Just pick one. Find one that's in your budget, buy it. Because every company makes a decent DSLR camera for, say, $500. The Canon Rebel will, for $500, around that, gets you a decent DSLR and an 1855 kit lens. Nikon makes them, Olympus makes them, Pentax makes them, everyone makes them. Your first camera will not be your last camera if you're at all interested in it and get any good at it. So the first one you buy doesn't matter. The first brand you buy might matter. One thing I tell folks is, do you have any friends who are advanced photographers? Will they loan you their lenses? If the answer is yes, buy their brand of camera. If you got a friend who'll loan you his Canon lenses, buy a Canon camera. Same with Nikon. Buy a Nikon camera. Otherwise, as a beginner, it literally does not matter. You don't, I'm going to assume here, you don't know enough about photography to know what a good camera or a good photograph is yet. Learn what good photography is first with your basic good beginner camera, and then move on to a different camera or a different lens. Perfect example is Nikon has the D4S, an amazing camera, $6,000, insanely fast camera. I drool over this camera. It's a professional level camera. I would give body parts for it. I don't need it though, because I know myself as a photographer. I know what that camera is good for, and I know that camera is not the camera for me. That's a sports shooter camera. That's for people who need really, really fast frames per second, really, really fast focus. I don't. So as much as I love that camera, as much as I lust after that camera, because of my experience, I know I don't need to buy that camera. So same for you. Buy a Canon base model, buy a Nikon base model, buy a Pentax base model, buy a used camera for that matter. Go to a secondhand store, go to a pawn shop, pick up a 2-year-old camera, go to Costco and buy a 2-year-old or 3-year-old camera. Learn how to use that camera. Learn about photography. Learn about aperture. Learn about shutter speed. Learn about ISO. All those things will serve you well no matter what camera you buy in the future, because aperture, shutter speed, ISO are common through every DSLR. So don't worry so much about the camera and the lens as the knowledge and the learning about photography first. You know, the first car many of us got was an old beater. You know, we either bought or our parents bought us an old Toyota that had 100,000 miles on it. And it wasn't long for this world. They didn't buy us a Ferrari as our first car. You bought an old beater car. You learned to drive in the old beater car. You beat up the beater car. You ran into a mailbox. You hit a couple of curbs. That's how you go about cameras. Don't worry about which camera you buy to begin with. Dave D says, on a recent vacation, I shot almost exclusively in manual to train myself on the controls. I got some decent shots. Absolutely. That's great, Dave. Fantastic if you know how to do that. I was talking to a lady at one of her last shoots, and she was really, really frustrated with her photography. And I said, well, what mode are you shooting in? She said, manual. I said, okay, well, what are the problems that you're having? Well, I take a picture and it's too dark. I said to her, how do you fix that? She said, I don't know. I said, what? I don't know how to fix it. Then you shouldn't be shooting on manual mode. It's like driving a manual car without knowing what a clutch is. Shoot manual if you understand the exposure triangle. Aperture, shutter, ISO. When you understand the exposure triangle, manual is almost easy. Because you can take a dark picture and go, okay, I have to do this. I change my ISO, I change my aperture, I change my shutter speed, whatever it might be. But if you don't understand those things, shooting in manual mode is a complete waste of time. And, as she found out, very frustrating. So I told her about aperture and said, just put your camera in aperture mode and practice that for a month, 2 months. Shoot nothing but aperture. Shoot nothing but depth of field stuff. And like I told you guys before, once you understand that, then shoot shutter. Shoot nothing but shutter stuff. Shoot birds and waterfalls and things that move. And that'll give you a good understanding of aperture and shutter speed. Someone said, Tom, should I rent a full frame camera or a fast lens? Well, that's an unanswerable question, Tom. I don't know what you're shooting. Full frame cameras are generally faster, more megapixels. Fast lenses are ones with very low aperture, great for low light conditions, or for high shutter speed stuff. And unless I know what you're shooting, I can't tell you which you should rent. I do encourage renting. I love renting. I love the idea of renting. I love the idea of you have a camera body, and then you go rent a lens that you're never ever going to buy because it's too expensive. So yeah, until I know what you want to shoot, I can't really be of much help when it comes to telling you which you should rent, whether it should be a fast camera or a fast lens. So, folks, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much to all of you for being tuned in. Thanks to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us. As always, if you have any questions, any comments, anything about the show you want to tell me about, I'm happy to listen. I love getting emails from you guys, so please send me an email when you get a chance on air at yourmaclifeshow.com or during the week to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!